Are you ready to step up? I got 6 tips to help you be the next great leader of your organization. Stay tuned. My name is Preston, and I'm here to help you create an exciting career. If you're a 20-something looking to get ahead in business, hit the subscribe button below and turn the bell on to be notified. I'm going to have new videos every Tuesday. Tip number 1, be comfortable with yourself. Usually when we're starting out, we don't really know what our value is to the organization. And we really, in order to find that value, we make it dependent on feedback from our supervisors or from our coworkers. The negative feedback that you get from coworkers or from your supervisor is professional, and you don't want to take that personally. Sometimes you just aren't good at stuff, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean that you can't be a great leader. If your feedback that you get is targeting something that you're sensitive about, make sure that you recognize that. Be comfortable with who you are. And as part of that, you need to know what value you actually do bring to the organization. So are you an innovator? Or are you a harmonizer? Are you, it ties into your strengths, which I'll talk about later. But what is your value that you bring to the organization? Tip number 2, be professional and be trustworthy. So if you're looking to become the next leader of your organization, one of the things that you need to establish off the bat is being trustworthy. And trust is one of those weird things where it's a small sort of unspoken thing that's built over a period of time through various small acts. Things like promising your deliverables that you say that you're going to do, showing up on time to a meeting, and you don't take off work if you're actually not sick. And the biggest part of being trustworthy as a young professional who's aspiring to be a leader is you want to show that you can succeed and that you can be trustworthy in adverse moments and in moments of success. And oftentimes you'll experience both, and the way that you act in those situations will dictate whether or not you'll be a successful leader within that organization. So for example, if you show up and your project is going to crap, and if you decide that you want your reaction to that is going to be chaos and stress and blaming and all these other attributes that aren't healthy for the team environment, you're going to lose and erode a lot of trust with that team. Adversely, if you show up and a project is going really, really poorly, and you show up with optimism and you're comfortable with yourself, like I said before, and you have a lot of integrity, and you say, you know what, team, like, this is nobody's fault, but we're going to get it through together, and we're going to succeed despite the fact that this situation is not ideal for anybody. Being trustworthy and professional is huge in team environments. Tip number 3 to being a great leader in your 20s is know your strengths. Typically, what people will do and what we're taught when we're younger is that we need to work on our weaknesses to make us better at our job. What you need to do is actually double down on your strengths, the things that you're good at, and use those to compensate for your weaknesses, or use your team to compensate for your weaknesses, because a lot of times that's more impactful than you trying to be better at your weaknesses if that's not something that you're good at in the first place. If you focus too much on your weaknesses, you're going to get more of those projects, versus if you focus on the strengths that you have and you succeed in your organization through your strengths. So know your strengths, know what they are. There's sort of 3 different ways that you can figure out what your strengths are. The first is ask around. Honestly, this is probably the fastest and the easiest way. If you go around and you say, hey, boss, hey, sibling, hey, mom and dad, hey, old coworker, hey, somebody from college, ask those people what you're good at, because a lot of times our strengths are things that we don't know. But you probably want to articulate it as well as maybe someone that knows you really well. So ask around, figure out what you're good at. Another way that you can figure out what you're good at is doing some sort of strength inventory. In my opinion, one thing that's really helpful is Clifton Strengths. I think that's what it's called now, Clifton Strengths Finders. So I'll link to it below just so that you have that resource available. It is paid, so you might have to pay a little bit, or if you are in an organization, sometimes they will pay for you to get that. It's a test. It's probably like 20 minutes. They ask you a bunch of different scenario questions, and you get 5 different strengths. You're good at X, Y, and Z, and it gives you a description of how that plays into your role. And that it doesn't really matter what your function is. It doesn't matter what your industry is. The strengths are more overarching. So for me, some of my strengths are strategic, winning others over, positivity. And so I can't remember the other 2, but I can use that. I can use positivity every day. I can use winning others over every day. I can be strategic in my role, whether I'm in human resources, whether I'm in marketing, whether I'm in sales. You can use your strengths across broad spectrums. The last way to find your strengths is to do a self-inventory. And this is a little bit tougher just because you have to sort of be a little bit more interpersonal. I am not as much interpersonal as maybe you are, but if you are really interpersonal and you kind of know, then you can figure out your strengths pretty quickly and write them down. In general, you want to have an ongoing list of your strengths so you can kind of decide, as you're working, if you're leading a group or if you're looking to move up, what are the opportunities or the projects that you can work on that are going to be really good to fitting your strengths. And they might not be things that you currently do. So for example, I started my career out in marketing. One of the things that I did is knowing I'm super strategic. A lot of marketing projects are creative based, and I'm also very creative, but that's not necessarily my strength. So when I looked toward projects and I said, hey, what are the projects that I can do? I usually gravitated toward the business strategy projects, and those were really helpful for me because I could go to my supervisor and say, hey, look how amazing I am. Look how great I am at what I do because I'm following my strengths and because I know what I'm doing. And those types of projects, those high visibility projects, when you start getting involved and start utilizing your strengths, you're going to stand out so much more and you're going to be on the fast track to a leadership position, especially when you can maximize your strengths and use them effectively. Tip number 4, know when to be a teacher and know when to be a student. What you want to do as a young professional is come into a role or come into a leadership position and know that you don't know everything. There was a story about Nelson Mandela where he would sit in his leadership meetings and he would have everyone around the table go and say their piece first, and then he would speak last. And a lot of the time it was because he didn't want to project his opinion or tell other people this is what needs to happen. What he wanted to be the person with the most information at the table before he made the decision on what he wanted to do. So he unconsciously made the decision to be a student and make sure that he was aware of everybody else's opinions, everybody else's data, all the other pieces before he mandated what he wanted done. And I think a lot of leaders do this wrong, a lot of young leaders, especially when we are elevated to those positions of leadership or management. We typically look at projects and say, we're going to do it this way because I'm in charge. And really what we should be doing is saying, I'm going to absorb first. And so knowing when to be a student versus a teacher, and there are teachable moments, there are tons of teachable moments. So if you're looking to be a leader because you want to be a mentor or a teacher, there are those opportunities, but don't go into a leadership position or don't go into leading a project thinking that you're going to be teaching everyone else, because your role is to be a student. And then once you have all the data, then make the decision and then lead the group, because you'll be far more effective than if you just go and tell people this is how it's going to be. And I'm interested to know if you're a student, if you're learning, what's one of the better comments or one of the best pieces of advice that you've gotten in your role that's helped you become a better leader? Write it in the comments below. I'm interested to hear. Tip number 5, start somewhere. As you're starting, it's really, really hard to look at great leaders and say, oh, I'm going to be like that person someday. Those people started at level 1 where you are right now, or level 2 or level 3 or wherever you are. Those people they weren't born great, they were made to be great, and they worked hard to become great leaders. You're starting out and you're looking and saying, okay, I want to figure out how I can be a great leader. Start with the basics. Start with figuring out what your organization values. Start figuring out what impact do you want to make as a leader with your team. And then make a plan. Small things, little by little by little, and eventually you'll become a great leader. But you have to start somewhere and start small. Finally, tip number 6, learn how to manage. One of the things I think that's the hardest transition when you move from individual contributor to managing a team or becoming a leader of an organization is learning actually how to manage workflow and manage projects. I'm going to make a video about this next week. When you're starting out as an individual contributor, you sort of have, if you think of your work in 3 spheres, you have sphere number 1, which is your technical knowledge, sphere number 2, which is like political, how to deal with politics in the organization, and sphere number 3, social, if you're talking about social and how to influence people. Typically when you're an individual contributor, your technical ability is really what you're being judged on. When you become a leader or a manager, a lot of that shifts to the politics of an organization or your social ability to influence others. Those become more prominent in your roles and less about the technical information. So when you're becoming a leader, when you want to step into that leadership role, know that that transition needs to happen. And really when you're becoming a leader, it's about how you navigate collaboration with others. And so if you think of your technical sphere as a leader going down and your political and social spheres going up, a lot of the work, a lot of your job is going to be aligning with other people and making sure that other people's opinions are heard, and less about the actual work. As weird as that sounds, the role of a manager is less about your individual technical ability, and it's more about your ability to work with others and collaborate to get projects done. So learn how to do that and you'll be set. And those are the 6 tips to help you become a great leader. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. I'm going to have new videos every Tuesday, and I look forward to seeing you next week.